all here. Thank you, Dan. I will call this meeting of the Finance Committee to order. Any corrections, additions, or omissions to the agenda?
Move approval.
Been moved.
Second.
Seconded by Randy. All in favor of approving the agenda as presented, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that's unanimous. We have the minutes from April 12th. It was kind of nice to go back and revisit our conversation pre-budget. Did anyone have any modifications or corrections or questions about the minutes?
Move approval. Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of April 12th as presented. Indicate all in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have some approved minutes for our last finance meeting. Next up, I guess we're going to pass this over to you, Lynn, for the year-end report. It's looking pretty rosy.
So I can just give a little bit of intro before then handing it over to Lynn, and just wanted to say, I know we're moving through this all pretty quick, but I don't certainly want to shortchange this budget item or this agenda item, but also I know we're going to want to spend a significant probably amount of time on the next item, and so anyway, just wanted to put that out there. And of course, we've got our next meeting at 10, and we're sure we all want to take a couple minutes between meetings, but. Let me just say that, I think our fiscal year 2023 was a very strong year for ORCAA in terms of the work we accomplished, the new staff we added to our team, in terms of the fiscal health of the agency and the general outlook. Staff are engaged and they're doing great work. The approved budget had us projected to borrow almost $275,000 from contingency to cover some important investments, but instead we put about $136,000 back into our contingency funds. And just some of those investments that we did make in the past year, we did add a records clerk to our staff that's really working closely with Debbie to help get the records and the archives in order. This is a 2-year project position. We also completely redid our website. That was about a $30,000 investment, but also to integrate it better with our database. We made significant upgrades to agency IT, and we completed a salary survey, and we've gotten some additional ad hoc HR support. So a couple reasons for the positive balance. We did underspend in a couple areas. We did not purchase a vehicle last year as we had budgeted, but as you'll hear later in the next hour, we actually purchased one earlier this week. We did underspend slightly on our IT budget, and we did not actually do the strategic planning work, so we did not hire a consultant. So that was another area for savings. But also we collected significantly more penalties than expected, as you've I'm sure noticed if you've looked at that. Several companies with many sources were not timely in paying our registration fees. So there were a lot of $500 NOVs from a couple different companies in particular. And then also 2 of our large Title V or air operating sources were out of compliance, and so ended up writing us or will be writing us large checks in the coming months. So those are some reasons for the positive balance. But again, I just want to thank Lynn for carefully tracking all of this, giving us the tools that I need and that we all need to really understand what's going on. And of course, Lynn works with Debbie and the rest of the team too. It's really a team effort here. So with that, I'll maybe we can bring up the form or bring up the budget sheet and hand it off to Lynn.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right. Good morning, all. Nice to see your faces, most of you. Missing a few faces, but thanks for the intro there, Jeff. Wow, you make my job easier too. And now I'm just going to do the numbers part. So covering our revenue. The board did approve a $2.8 million budget. Actually, it was slightly more than that. It was $3.1 million. And we brought in $2.9 million. And, just some quick comments. For the NOC major minor, we did end the year with fewer permits, but we're starting a new year in full swing. And
more on that a little bit later.
Yes, sir. Correct. And for annual registration, good news, we ended up with additional registration funds and new sources out there. And for our asbestos that we budgeted 132, we brought in 142. Again, there's still a lot of activity in our 6 counties. So the economy is still on a good par here. So that explains with folks applying for permits, renovations happening, land clearing. Well, granted, we did bring in 40,000 versus 26. So yes, people are burning. I'm not going to say anything more. And for the wood smoke reduction program, we budgeted 170. We brought in 148. Keep in mind, receipts are based on actual activity and expenditures, meaning we received our 4th quarter payment in fiscal year 2024. So otherwise it would have been higher and closer to what we budgeted. And for the ARP grant with EPA, we received 131,500 for the improvements at Chica Peak and the purchase of a mobile monitoring or a monitoring trailer. And we anticipated spending the funds earlier. However, there were some delays that occurred, but by the end of September 30th, we will have expended 89%. So we've already spent 89,000, paid one of 2 vendors, and that was the purchase of the trailer. So, and that's okay. It rolled over to the next year. We're not losing it. And for, let's see, prior year end, Jeff already shared with you the notes for our penalties. We budgeted 75. You never know what you're going to get. We did receive 330, and Jeff shared with you the reasons behind that. The good thing is a lot of them are small little ones. Thurston County Treasurer's investment income. Wow. Thank you, Thurston County. They're really doing a great job with our investments. We budgeted 10,000. We received over 32,000. And for our building,
Lynn, is that just LGIP? It's just doing really well?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay.
Rah. Yes, they're doing. Nicole is just amazing. Amazing. She does a great job up there, Thurston County. Got to recognize their efforts there and helping all of us smaller agencies. And last year we had budgeted 59,000 in our rental income. We did bring in 50,000, but we also had one of our tenants pay up front for the year. So that was reflected in the previous year. So you never know if a tenant is that anxious to pay us all up front or month to month. And hey, of course, we'll be glad to accept that. Pretty much that is a roundup of the revenue at 2.9 million. Jeff indicated we did not touch our general fund contingency draw as budgeted, and we added 136,000 back to our general fund. I know I'm kind of speeding through this because to allow us the time, as Jeff indicated. Any questions on revenue?
Questions, Randy, Jim?
For me,
I'm not in the
It's
fishbowl.
pretty
still.
self-explanatory. Appreciate you going into some of the reasons, but it's we've seen this before. It looks awfully rosy. We ate it when the penalties are the reason it's rosy. It does seem like one of the contributors, but good to hear our client base is growing as well. I mean, that's good news.
That is a good thing.
more people paying for pollution.
Yeah, there's a lot of small, and there was a number of smaller individuals, so it is unfortunate. We tried to do our education first.
Mhm.
So the payroll, we're right on target. We spent 97%, slightly under, and it was due to what Jeff had explained. There was a delay in hiring of our records clerk, a smaller amount. We had a savings in retirement because DRS reduced the premium. On our non-payroll, again, slightly under budget. That's okay. Didn't purchase the car. For the building and operations, again, slightly under. If you net out the maintenance and the leasehold improvements, it kind of washes out each other. So we did have some unanticipated maintenance, but we reduced the leasehold but again, we're making changes, which you'll hear about in the full board meeting. Yay. For our program operations, we did budget 324, spending 175. A big chunk of that again was the ARP grant, 131,000 that we will expend in this fiscal year we're in, fiscal year 2024. So the net surplus was 198,000. However, 136 was our general fund. And then Title V, the standalone program that has to pay for itself, is repaying our general fund 62,000. So that's the difference. And that's what sums up the 198,000 difference.
Hey, Linda, when do we have to spend out that ARP grant by? Is it the end of 25?
June 30th, 2024.
Oh, we have to spend it by that time.
Yes, oh, we will. We
Okay.
anticipate, we informed EPA a week or 2 weeks ago that we are planning to expend the funds and close out the grant 8 to 9 months earlier than expected, which is good. So.
And Lynn has been really on it and rushing to get payments with the potential government shutdown, trying to make sure that we get our payments.
Otherwise, we
and
float that, you know, we don't.
Yes.
So, but the big ones went out, almost 90,000. They got all their paperwork in, their prevailing wage, their tons of documents. So working with the contractors and the vendors have really been, it's really been positive. So that's what you want. That's the experience you want. They know there's paperwork and lots of it. And
and you'll hear more about the Chica Peak project next hour.
Yes.
Odell's going to give a bit of an update on that work.
Right.
Great.
Moving on to the fund balance, unless there's any questions on revenue expenditures. Again, a really nice snapshot of our beginning balance with Thurston County Treasurers. We started with a little over 2 million and we ended up with a little bit more. And also our allocations for contingency funds and capital funds per board are listed right there. The expense contingency at 20%. Again, that was board approved, and that changes depending on what we end up year end with expenditures. Updates have been on the remaining allocations, the security deposits, office building. And the reason why we're not increasing the office building, now that we paid the building off, it gives us more ability to include those hard costs in our ongoing budget every year. Okay, we're ending up vacation sick leave about 155,000. Title V still owes the general fund 46,000 following year end. So again, we have 2.2 million in our checking account with Thurston County Treasurers. Any questions before Jeff takes it over?
Just saying kudos to you and the team. That, like, what a phenomenal way to finish, you know, a new executive director's first full budget. You know, I'm proud of all of you for this accomplishment. It's been a big lift, and everybody got up to speed, and we put more money in contingency, and I think we're ready for a rainy day or some succession, right? That's cool.
Excellent.
Succession, rainy day, no. Yeah, so.
I said or.
Oh, right. That's right. All right, thank you.
I mean, that's kind of that's a good segue there, Jim, and we'll hand it over to Jeff.
Okay, great. Before we dive into the numbers, and Dan, if you could switch over, actually maybe back to the agenda on the screen, but before we dive into the next sheet, I just wanted to give some context. I think you are all well aware that ORCAA is on the verge of some significant personnel changes in the coming months and years. 4, possibly 5 staff will be leaving the agency within the next probably 2 to 3 years or so. Collectively, well over 100 years of experience at ORCAA. And for an agency of 17 people, that's a really significant transition. So, and I know succession planning was a theme that came up with agency staff and conversations that you had during my performance evaluation, and it's certainly something I've been given a lot of thought to. It's the #1 item on my performance measures for my 23-25 period. So again, it's been getting a lot of attention. So the first departures will be Robert Moody, will be leaving at the end of January, and then Mark Gooden will be leaving at the end of April. And so but in addition to the personnel changes, there's just a lot of other moving pieces. There's changes to our work. We talked about the increase in some of our sources. As we'll talk about a little bit more, and you'll hear from Mark, we've had just a massive increase in applications for new source review permits. Just so anyway, I won't go into that in more detail, but just say, and there's a number of federal regulatory changes, things that we're thinking about with our own regulations that will impact our work. And so there's just a lot of moving pieces. So, but in terms of preparing for this, I have thought about organizational change I'd like to make. And so Dan, if you could bring up the org chart. So this is the current org chart, and you'll see, so there's engineering manager, Mark's position, and then Robert's position, the compliance manager, which are kind of two separate programs now. Well, so Dan, if you flip over to the proposed org chart. So what I'm proposing to do is to essentially combine the engineering manager and compliance manager positions into a single position. I have a number of reasons for wanting to do this, but at a high level, just the work of the compliance and engineering programs are very closely linked, and I feel it would be more efficient to have the programs under one manager. Of course, Robert and Mark each currently have full-time jobs, and so some of the work, it's not like can just combine those into one position. So some of what they're currently doing will flow down to the compliance supervisor and the engineering supervisor. And then I'm also looking at, there's things that are frankly in my job description that I think that I would like to offload to a new compliance engineering manager. And I've got some examples of this, so that this is not other local layers do use this structure. Puget Sound Clean Air, for instance, has what they call a compliance director, who is a combined position, and I've got that job description. And so in the coming weeks, I'll be drafting up this job description. But then that, combining this position, as I mentioned, with the additional work that the additional supervision that the supervisors are going to be doing, those positions will have less time to write permits and also do inspections. So there will be some work there. So I'm proposing right now to add another AQS specialist, and so I'd like to move forward quickly to hire that. At some point when Mark is in the coming months, we'll also need to hire another engineer to replace Mark and to have more permitting horsepower, but I see that as delayed a little bit, and so we can talk a little bit more about the timing when we're talking about the specific numbers. But Lynn and I have made some assumptions about the timing of these of this. Would like to move forward and get the compliance engineering manager perhaps hired by January 1, and perhaps even the new inspector, the AQS 1 or 2 is also, we'll go out recruiting for 1 or 2, perhaps even earlier, maybe by December. But so that's what's going on in the engineering compliance programs. The other new position that I'm looking at right now is the financial analyst position. This is something Lynn and I have talked a little bit about as we were finalizing our fiscal year 2024 budget. We mentioned that this is something that we felt was important and that we would be coming back to you with a likely budget amendment. And so the idea behind this position is that over time, we'll transition into leading on payroll, accounts payable, purchasing, contracting, and some grant management. Frankly, the agency just needs more capacity in these areas, more redundancy from an audit perspective, and frankly, from a kind of a fairness perspective to Lynn as well. I mean, there's currently, because of the things on her plate, there's roughly about 1 week per month that she can take off just because of other priorities, because of needing to get accounts payable, payroll, other things. And so we really need some additional capacity in that area. Of course, Lynn is also essentially our facilities manager, and there's just, as we own our building now, and there's just things that we need to do that need to free up some more of Lynn's time to do some of these other things. So, and then of course, this position is also connected to succession planning around Lynn's departure. I think Lynn's departure is going to a little further out than Mark and Robert's, but it is something that I'm looking at and that the agency needs to prepare for.
And these seem really prudent steps, Jeff. I don't have any issue. I guess I'm wondering, on the compliance and engineering side, is that a net add of one staff? Eventually, you're kind of backfilling Jennifer and Mike, and then getting a new manager so they can still be supervisors, but have some engineering and compliance applications in their job?
Yes. So it is a net addition of an engineer. I'm sorry, of an
Fine.
inspector. Yes. And again, the inspections. Well, we've got 8,000 square miles. We've got of jurisdiction, and we've got a lot of sources. And so I think that this is something that the agency has struggled with. In terms of how best to cover that. And so, and as I mentioned, with the other shifts of creating the new manager position, I think it's, frankly, we just do need another inspector position.
Okay. Other questions or comments for Jeff on this proposal?
Yeah, I'd just echo. I mean, Jeff and I have been talking about, the succession ideas for the organization since before he started. and so I think this is a really good approach to both actually probably reduce some back and forth between departments, because working as one department will create an economy of scale, and then really getting the timing of being able to get some new folks in with a little bit of overlap with this institutional knowledge, if you will, I think is also significant. So and as we'll see in a minute, I feel like we're in a good budget position for this timing, and everything is good.
Yeah, one of the things that's driving my desire need to get the job description done and get that actually out on the street is in late October. There's a conference, the Air and Waste Management Association, which is one of the big professional organizations that we work with. So I've been asked to be on a panel at that conference, and I will be using that as a recruiting opportunity to hopefully recruit, because I really want to have a really strong candidate pool for this position, because it's going to be critical for the success of the agency. I know we've got some internal interest, but I also am hoping for a lot of external interest as well. And it feels good to again, we've got the salary survey that was done recently, so I feel like we can be confident that our compensation is competitive.
Great. Did you expect more pushback, and you got other proposals as well, Jeff? This seems really logical. So
okay, well, what we don't need, I mean, so what I need from you today is basically, and sounds like I'm feeling the support, but that we want to move forward with moving forward with the steps to hire these positions. We will be coming back to you in advance, and maybe now we should shift to the budget sheet, but we will be coming back to you for a budget amendment. Lynn calculated by February 1st, but we're thinking maybe December, sometime in advance of that, maybe December, to go through the process to actually get a budget amendment, have the hearing on the budget amendments. But so we don't need that today. Really, just your blessing and approval that this is a sound way to move forward, and we can start working on hiring these additional positions.
Yeah, I think this is a question for the whole board too. It's not just a financial decision. You got to broach it with the full board as well.
Yes, I guess that's a good question. What sort of do you want to summarize, or what do you want to do during the full board? During the full board meeting, and what of this, how much detail would you like me to go into with the full board?
I'm happy to summarize. I think showing just this org chart really quickly, maybe during my finance report, and just a little bit of context real quick, 20,000 foot view about succession planning, and I think you could do it in 2 or 3 minutes, and I think it would be helpful.
Okay.
Randy, I can't see you, but are you still with us on board with this plan?
Yep, I'm still with you. I'm a firm believer in succession planning. Some of the other, got to watch and learn and see what comes out of it.
Great, thanks. Okay, yeah, I think you've got support. I don't think you need action specifically from this body.
Okay.
Go back onto the budget impacts.
So Dan, could you flip over and go to the first? Yep, there you go. Thank you. Maybe make it a little bit bigger. There. So Lynn, can I hand it off
You
to
bet.
you now to walk us through this?
Yes, thank you. So what you're seeing here basically is a snapshot of all the components that Jeff just briefly described to you on basically the 5 positions, the new positions, the replacement position, and also the middle column, well, you don't see column E, but the amendment column. So you got your approved budget, board approved, 3.1 million. We are proposing adding $226,000 to the budget to cover the cost, leaving a final budget of 3.3 million. And basically on the bottom, that's the detail. What is it going to cost the agency by position? And what is it going to cost the agency overall for the remainder of the year? So basically the costs are, of the positions is 250,000. However, Mark and Robert are already in the budget, so we have to subtract that out, right? So we're not double accounting for those months that they are leaving the agency, but we also have a obligation to pay vacation and sick if there's any balance, which we have anticipated. There's also some supplies and training that is part of the hiring process as well. So we anticipate the cost of being about 226,000. Of that 226,000, $115,000 is coming from revenue. And we would be dipping into the contingency draw of 110,000. Though we budgeted using 216, it's now going to be 327,000. And in years past, we haven't used a contingency since 2016. So go ahead, Jeff.
Let me just say, and based upon what we expect to be, what we know will be coming in for penalties in the coming months, we will not. I can tell you, we won't need to go into contingent. We won't need to dip into our contingency funds.
We'll more than cover it. Correct.
Yes.
But
Good question, Lynn. Are these annual numbers or 6-month numbers?
these are the combination of when we hire the new financial analyst and the combined compliance engineer manager start in January. So these are prorated in the year. This is not a full year cost. That'll be in next year. Good question,
Okay.
Jim.
Yeah, and that's sort of I'll let you finish, and then I think that's where I want to dig in for a minute, just on like the workload analysis and what that looks like in the next budget. So
Yes. Okay. And so basically the net cost to adding these positions and to provide the needed supplies and training is 226,000. If we move on to the next page, this is going to detail out what the revenue stream looks like. Where is it coming from? How are we going to pay for that 226,000? So what we did was we updated some of the contracts with real numbers now, because we didn't have those real numbers when we proposed the fiscal year 2024 budget to the board in June. We know what these numbers are. Those have been updated in the core. Also with the ARP grant, we've already paid out $2,200 out of the 131. That's a consideration. We also added $20,000 in the NOC and NSR, new source review, due to the high number of permits coming in. The higher activity, again, that Mark Goodman will be talking to you about at the board meeting. We also added $10,000 in the asbestos line. Again, higher revenue coming in. Penalties, we did add 72,000. However, we expect to get $340,000 from one source this year. And what I did, I just backed out the third payment because it's due on June 30th of 2024. If they come in at 4 o'clock June 30th, it's not going in the bank. So won't be in our fiscal year. But we're definitely safe to add the 72,000 to the penalty line. I also increased the investment income line due to the improved expectation of our interest income from Thurston County. And then that leaves us with 115,000 of new revenue and using 110,000 of contingency. So that 226,000 is what's going to be paying for those prorated costs through June 30th, 2024. So Jim, you said you had some questions.
Yeah, I have a couple. First, can I go to the salaries? If it's okay. Sorry, I can't see you, Greg. Is that an okay approach?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually,
so
Dan,
two questions on the salaries. Is $40,000 really a starting engineer with a stamp full-time employee?
That's a position that is going to start March 2024. So that is
Okay, so that's why I was okay. So
Yes,
none
sir.
of these are annualized. It's
No,
all
sir.
prorated. Okay,
It-
so I won't
yeah.
ask. Okay,
So
I won't
finan-
ask it. I won't ask the other question about the compliance manager that felt too low either. So okay, okay,
Right.
good. And then really like that's my like sort of more of the higher level question.
Okay.
When we do the next budget, the revenue towards this gets better because we spread it out in the new assessment of the workload through all of the fees and assessments, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
On
So-
that line, sorry, can I just, something I would love to see is kind of a 5-year impact of this. I don't know if that's really challenging. I don't want to create a huge amount of work, but it's a real easy thing to look at a moment and see what are the job change impacts going to be over the next 5 years, and that's recognizing the the increased revenue as well.
Well, and Greg, I actually thought of that too. Like I think the timing with when we start the next budget will be when we're just implementing it, and so we can look at that. Even then would be okay with me because it's coming up in a few months.
Yeah, we don't have to make it work. It's true. Thanks.
That's right. But like, and to that point, I think for me, it's like, what does the growth look like for the customers in the field compared to, because in my mind, my assumption is that the fees would be stabilized a little bit because of increased workload, but then adding staff's going to drive a little bit of a fee increase, but that still might be fairly balanced because of the increased revenue coming in naturally. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and another piece that we're looking at is we want to make updates to our registration rule, a rule 4.1 that talks about what sources do we register. Robert's been taking a close look at that, and then we also want to look at rule 6.1, what sources are required require new source review permits. And so we want to make sure that the sources that we're requiring to be registered, there's air quality reasons why we want those to be registered. And so, so there could be, so it's not like our work is just constant, or that, well, if you get new sources, that the work increases. So earlier when I mentioned potential regulation changes is also tweaking our work. So that's another kind of moving piece that we need to be looking at. And certainly as we prepare our fiscal year 2025 budget and have a better sense for how some of these initial positions have been filled and how is the work looking, and I think we'll be able to get a better sense for that.
Yeah, I think it's just important, I think, for the board to understand that when you look at these numbers, the gap's not going to be as big as you think it is when you look on this page, because we will pay for it with our reanalysis at next year's budget.
Right.
Okay.
I would like to add that a 5-year projection will definitely be 100% guess. I propose that a 3-year projection would be more realistic. 5 years is really difficult you're getting 100% guess here. And yet there's a lot of guessing going into 3 years too, but I think it would be more responsible with the 3-year to put out a 5-year. It would be very difficult. I'm just gonna.
I'll take your recommendation, Lynn. 3 years is fine, but also Jim's that this is all going to kind of ripen at the same time that we're doing budget. We can look at it holistically. I don't require you to do extra work to justify this on a 3-year. I know there's going to be jiggering that has to happen as we plan for our next budget. I can wait for that if it's okay with the rest of the committee.
Yeah, and I want to give you a responsible, a worthy budget projection. Considering the fees, the CPI, the population growth is projected to just explode, especially in 5 years. And Jeff's right, the NSR fees are going through an evaluation and what sources need to be registered. And a workload analysis is definitely going to be an important tool in this next year's budget process because of the changes and the additions and again, it's just being responsible. You want to be responsible and accountable. So, but real quick on the 4 new position or the 4 positions that are outlined here, the financial analyst, it's 6 months. For the AQS2, it's 7 months. The engineer, it's 4 months. And then the combined compliance engineer manager, it's 6 months. So
Thank you for that.
yes, no, thank you. Good question. Good questions. I like the questions. So
And one thing, actually, I think there's a good story to tell on you see the AQS2 promotion. So we've got an inspector that joined the agency in July of 2021 as a inspector 1, real go-getter, veteran, just a great staff. Quick learner. We promoted him to an AQS2 in July after being with us a year. And also he started taking on monitoring responsibilities when we had a staff leave. And it's been really helpful to have a member of our compliance team doing monitoring, because when they're out for inspections, it's also easy for them to check the monitors. But this individual had a job offer from Puget Sound Clean Air, and ORCAA's got a history of, we have inspectors, we train them up for a period of time, and then they leave for greener pastures.
Newer, not greener, newer.
Yes, newer pastures. There you go. Or so I was intent on keeping this individual, and so made him a counter offer, still less than what he would have made at Puget Sound, but because he believes in the agency, sees the direction that we're going, and feels that he's got a strong future here, he's committed to staying at ORCAA rather than accepting the Puget Sound offer. And so the AQS2 promotion is, what I offered is to bump him up 4 steps on the ORCAA pay scale. And again, having recently done the salary survey, I'm confident in that structure that we have. So anyway, I think it's a good story to tell. I'm really happy that he stayed with us and that he sees a future here, because he's exactly the kind of staff that that we want to keep here at ORCAA.
Yep.
So Greg, I would just point the board, when you do your quick summary, to the packet and ask them to review the numbers so they're ready for a supplemental budget in the fall, knowing that unless they have an issue, Jeff's moving forward.
Sounds good. We'll do. And we'll give Jeff a few minutes with to kind of go over, not this level of detail, but just kind of that first one.
Right.
Okay. Well, let's see. Does that any other questions or comments on this?
So basically, the fund balance page just reflects the amendment additions of the 226,000.
Okay. And I'll, in the finance report too, talk briefly about how rosy the the fact that we had budgeted to take out, and maybe I'll lean on you. Oh, maybe you can just tell me those numbers. Remind me, Lynn, we had budgeted to pull from our reserve 100 and.
We're talking fiscal year 2024 with a budget amendment?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
No.
So
No, 23. What we were planning to
oh,
do.
You're
okay.
in.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
You're in.
Yes.
23.
So for 2023, we originally budgeted 216,522. We are instead using 0. In fact, we're going to be adding 136,000. Oops. Sorry, I lost my numbers.
That's all right.
So it pays for the increase.
We're gonna be adding. Sorry, there, 136,200.
Great, okay. I'll start with that and then, and go into this. I think that's enough from the current fiscal year 23.
Mhm.
Okay, great. Anything else, Jeff or Lynn, that you wanted to go over?
Oh, I think just, we appreciate your support and I think
Make it
was-
pretty easy, I gotta say, you know, we've got all the answers to all the questions and, you know, everything's coming up black. It's hard to.
And it's good that we got the questions coming in because it helps
Yeah.
us, you know, understand where you're coming from too. And so we appreciate the input.
Okay,
Absolutely.
great. Anything else for the good of the order? Okay, well, we'll see you at the same Zoom link at 10 o'clock, right? And hand it over to Jim to chair that meeting, and this finance committee meeting is adjourned. Thanks, guys.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thanks, everyone. See